Dan Caldwell. He's the former senior advisor over at the Pentagon, the Department of War, and, of course, a proud United States Marine veteran. Dan, how are you?
I'm doing great. And Jack, you set it up, so I just got to go for it. When you say we're part of the Department of the Navy, you're correct. We're the men's department of the Navy.
Now, Dan, I just wanted to let you know that when you're in the green room here at Human Events Daily, I know you might get a little bit hungry, so I've let out a couple of packs of Crayola crayons for you to gnaw on if you get your appetite up a little bit.
Well, I appreciate that. I am getting hungry. I hope you have the green. That's my favorite flavor.
That's so weird. We keep running out of the greens, and now I think I know why. But, but Dan, we're here with we're here with the Vietnam veterans. We're here with my company, and one of the things that this memorial earlier today that really struck with me was the intensity of the Vietnam conflict and how intense it was for the Marines. 7 pages, single spaced, of KIAs that they read through, a single bell rung after each one. And it took quite some time to get through the entire list because they read the names out. And you realize that, wait a minute, that's just one company. So walk through for me the intensity of Vietnam for the Marine Corps and part of the Marine Corps history, and also just the understanding that it gives those who have served when it comes to those discussions of perhaps sending Marines into the fire all around the world yet again.
Yeah, this is important, Jack. And first of all, I enjoyed watching part of the ceremony that you posted today. I just want to say, when I was going through basic training in the Marine Corps, I was always told that we walk in the shadows of giants. And the Vietnam Marines were definitely those giants for us junior Marines. We always looked up to them. And, we were well educated on our history in Vietnam, and you cannot overstate the intensity of the Marine experience in Vietnam. So first and foremost, it's important to know that most of the Marines of Vietnam served in I Corps, which is the military unit that controlled all the U.S. military assets in the northern part of South Vietnam. So they were right on the border with North Vietnam, the DMZ, and then they also controlled areas all the way out to the border with Laos. So that's where you had places like Khe Sanh, where there was a famous battle fought, where the Marines really distinguished themselves, basically held out in a siege for several months. And then out more towards the sea, you had Hue City, where the Marines fought the famous battle in 1968, the Battle of Hue City. So this is where you had the North Vietnamese, the VC. They were closest to their safe havens. They were closest to their supply lines. So that is where you saw some of the most intense combat of the war. And so that is why you had very high Marine casualties. You had a lot of very intense combat. And you had a tremendous amount of heroism from Marines that served throughout that war. And so it's unfortunate that I don't think a lot of the Marine history in Vietnam has really been highlighted. You've had great books like Fields of Fire, The Nightingale Song, that have talked through that. But it really, it's nothing compared to what I went through in Iraq. And it's nothing compared to, again, there's a lot of brutal fighting and heroism in Afghanistan, but it's really nothing compared to that. It was significantly worse by every measure.
And so, Dan, I could see that from, it connected with me today because as they read the names, so many of, they also read the dates. They read the dates of their sacrifice, and so many of the men, the dates would line up. It was the same day that they were all killed, and so you realize these battles that were coming back day after day after day were just so intense. And this was totally different from what we even saw. And obviously I remember the Iraq-Afghanistan era as well, but it was just a magnitude larger. Dan, you and I talk about this all the time, but, obviously United States Marine Corps is willing to go wherever Uncle Sam sends them. But isn't this also, on the flip side, why we need to be very, very careful and honor their service and willingness to do that if we are to then call them into, say, Iran or Venezuela or one of these places?
Absolutely. Just because you have a highly trained, well-equipped, lethal United States Marine Corps does not mean that you should send it around the world to fight in every conflict or solve every problem. Military force should always be the last resort. And too often, especially in the post-Cold War era, our policymakers have deployed not just Marines, but soldiers, sailors, airmen to conflicts that are not in our national interest. And the Marines and all other service members distinguish themselves well in those conflicts. But let's just, Jack, let's just quickly talk about what's going on today at the White House. At the White House today, there is a former leader of al-Qaeda meeting with President Trump. Al-Shara, also known as Jolani, is now the president of Syria. I think, to be clear, it's very good that President Trump is engaging with this guy. He clearly wants to do business with us. Instead of starting another civil war in Syria, we should engage him, and I applaud the Trump administration for doing that. But let's think of the symbolism of that for a second. This guy fought United States Marines in Iraq. He was a leader of al-Qaeda. And he essentially joined al-Qaeda because of the Iraq war and because of our overreach in the region. And so we've invested all this blood and treasure in these wars, and the end result is our enemies winning. And it's because in most cases, we didn't need to fight those wars. We didn't need to deploy the Marines. So I think that's an important lesson that we should absorb. Again, we need a well-trained Marine Corps, well-trained Navy, Air Force, Army, but we should absolutely use them as a last resort. And just them existing isn't a reason that we should send them around the world to serve as the world's policemen.